Here's a comic book. There's a lot of comic books in the world. Did you know there's enough comic books to cover the Great Wall of China? But with so many comic books in the world, where do you start? If you decide you don't want to put down a payment on a house and start the hobby of collecting comics, it can be a big, daunting, colourful maze if you're not a professional comic book collector like myself. So you go down to your local comic book store, or also known as the Holy Land, and you're immediately overwhelmed with this colourful collection. Then suddenly, one comic book catches your eye, for reasons you're not really sure of. Is it the character, the title, the number, the art, the pose, the colour, the writer? But you don't even know the adventures that await inside this comic book, yet you cannot help but want it. That's because the cover of this comic book has done its job. It could be one or several elements that has drawn you to this particular comic book cover. That, my friend, is called, you've just been covered. I don't have a clever name for it. Legendary comic book artist John Romita once said, "The cover is the most important page of any comic book." And straight to the point, yeah, but I agree. Comic books act in the same nature as movie posters or gaming box art, advertisements, or to use a more modern term, clickbait. They are designed to entice you, to grab you, to pull you in. A comic book cover can make the difference between a pass or a sale. But movie posters and video game covers, they're all pretty generic. You have the main character or characters at the front looking all moody with the same colour around them, usually blue or yellow. Hell, even the MCU posters look like mushroom on toast. But comic book covers? I'm talking Batman, I'm talking Superman, I'm talking Wonder Woman. Wait, you said you like all of these characters? I've got the cover for you. Wait, you said you don't like these characters? Then I'm talking Hulk, I'm talking Flash, I'm talking ass, I'm talking horror, I'm talking cute, I'm talking manic, I'm talking simplistic. Don't like this Spider-Man cover? Then there's literally over 1,000 Spider-Man comic book covers for you to choose from. One is different from the We'll get into that. The theme of this video, I guess, is there's a lot of covers to please every comic book boy and girl, but they still need to find new, innovative ways to make sure you buy them. Let's go into the time machine of the year 1960. You've just finished your paper round and you've earned your 10 cents. You rush down to your local drugstore and buy the latest comic book, but they all cost 10 cents. So if my math checks out, you can only buy one comic book. This is where the power of a strong comic book cover comes in. Just like puppies and a pound, comic books want to come home with you. Two comic books catch your eye. Betty and Veronica issue 60. Who's this lady? How does she know Archie's name? And the devil is in this issue? I bet hilarity and hijinks will be fruitful within this issue. Or the comic book where Flash gets fat.
Shut up and take my money!
Calm down, okay? Alright?
He's fat!
With kids being worthless, with limited income, and with competition between the two companies getting tighter, comic book companies had to pull all of the tricks to make sure you buy them. Hulk vs. Thing, I need to see who wins. Spider-Man vs. Superman, I need to see who wins. Godzilla vs. Gnarls Barkley, whoever wins, we lose. Superman needs to eat all of the burgers or else he'll die? I mean, how? And why? Gwen Stacy dies. Captain America punching Hitler. Gorilla. Fun fact, back in 1951, DC editors noticed that comic books with gorillas on the cover tend to sell a lot more. So DC flooded the market with gorillas on their comic book covers. I would have loved to have been within that meeting, like, Wiki, what's the plan for comic book covers this year? Well, the ones with gorillas are selling well, so probably do more of that. Gorillas? Why gorillas? Not sure, mate. King Kong came out like 20 years ago, and Planet of the Apes isn't even out yet. Kids just love gorillas. Planet of the Apes? How do you know something that isn't out yet? Because we're not real. We exist in this YouTube video that Mahoney created in 2020 because he's bored of being in lockdown due to the great coronavirus pandemic. Despite probably less than 100 people would actually watch this video, he's worked very hard on it. It helps him get away from his crippling depression. So if you could like this video, it would mean a lot to him. Kids love gorillas, you say? Before the internet where professional comic book collectors can look up which comic books were coming out that week, comic book covers were the main driving point to get those comic books off the shelves. Sure, you had your previews and word of mouth did help a lot, but back in the glory day of comics, there was no powerful tool than a comic book cover. You might be thinking that's it. Surely there's nothing more to add. It's just a cover on a comic book. It's not like comic book companies would create different covers for the same comic book, right? Would they? Comic book boys and girls, welcome to a controversial part of the video, the variant cover. Here's Amazing Spider-Man number 1, came out in 2018. Here's Amazing Spider-Man number 1, came out in 2018. Same comic, but different covers. They released 60 goddamn covers for this issue. Why?
Money.
Spider-Man is like Cornetto. Now, hear me out. Spider-Man is one of the most popular superheroes ever, just like Cornetto is one of the popular ice creams. If Cornetto know they sold well, why would Cornetto limit their customers to only one flavour? So they broadened their selection. If you don't like mint, you may like strawberry. If you don't like chocolate, you may like vanilla. And if you don't like vanilla, then get out. However, while ice cream is a cheap pleasure, variant covers are a guilty, naughty, expensive pleasure. There's different types of variant covers. You have your 1 in 25 covers, so for every 25 copies the comic book store orders of Amazing Spider-Man issue 1, they would receive 1 in 25 cover. They also have 1 in 50 covers, and 1 in 100 covers. They have 1 per store covers, which are super rare. They have sketch covers, which are like penciled black and white versions. Homage covers to unlock your nostalgia and pay respect to the original cover. Blank covers so you can draw your own comic book cover or get a professional artist to draw the cover for you. Each cover is more limited than the last, creating like this tier list from reasonably priced to...
It's a bit steep, isn't it?
Steep? It's effing vertical.
I don't know when variant covers started within the comic book industry. I'm guessing it's back in the 90s during the comic book crash, but that's a different video for another time. What's my opinion on variant covers? I like them. They're all done by different artists, so if you don't like the standard cover, you can pay that little bit extra for the cover you want. For example, I wasn't the biggest fan of Isard Ribic's cover of Fantastic Four issue 1, so I got the 1 in 50 Alex Wosk cover, and...
Yeah, boy.
If you have the money to buy expensive covers, then more power to you. I'm not jealous of you, I just want the same level of income so I can buy the pretty rare covers too. But for every Alex Ross cover, there's some comic book covers that are famous for the wrong reasons. Now I know that art is subjective, and who am I, a fat, sweaty comic book nerd criticising an artist's work, when I can't even draw a stable plan for my future?
But I'm gonna do it anyway. What? This!
Deadpool vs Gambit, I mean, it hardly screams fight of the decade, but a tussle tangle with swords, and the background looks as bland as Gambit's face. X-Force, issue 3.
Damn, boy, he's thick!
Rob Liefeld's Captain America.
He's fat!
Wolverine Revolver.
What's wrong with your face?
Action Comics 364, and oh god, where do I begin with this one? Why is there so many logos everywhere? It's like a NASCAR race. I see Green Arrow, but the Atom looks pretty boring, but not as boring as this background. The villain looks like one of those toys you get from the pound shop, and he's called Junkman, whilst he slams Superman's junk. Sticking with Superman we have... oh no!
Police! Help!
World's Finest, issue 14. So the world's finest heroes of Superman, Batman and Robin face the challenge of teenagers swimming in a no-swimming area. Fellas, I know we're on issue 14, but I thought we're going to save the more complex story threads to later. I love Robin's face like, oh, how could they, Batman? Shazam, issue 6, and I'm sure this was meant to be a heartwarming cover and showing the leaps and bounds of technology, like, hey look, we can put your kid on the comic book cover. But it looks like Shazam is holding a corpse with that sinister smile. Moving away from superheroes, let's have a look at Alf and oh my god!